Okay, so this face, it's probably the most recognized face in the entire history of art. You know it instantly. We all do. But behind that incredibly famous portrait, there's a much, much deeper story. And that's what we're going to get into today.
It's a question that sounds so simple, we almost don't even think to ask it. We all know the Mona Lisa is famous. But why? I mean, out of all the millions of incredible paintings out there, why this one?
And look, for most of us, the answer we've always heard begins and ends with her smile, right? This quote from a BBC documentary really nails it. We're all taught that her expression is this huge enigma, the real source of her magic. But what if that's not it? What if the smile is actually just a small piece of a much bigger puzzle? What if the real reasons she became a global superstar are way more dramatic and honestly a whole lot weirder than you'd think? Because her rise to fame is really a perfect storm. It's a wild story that pulls in a daring, real-life crime that the whole world followed, some really cool science about how our own eyes play tricks on us, and even a complex cultural theory about the power of just looking. So our story doesn't start in an art gallery. It starts with a crime scene. See, before 1911, the Mona Lisa was, a well-respected painting, but she was hardly a household name. That all changed, though, the day she just vanished. Get this, on August 21st, 1911, a handyman at the Louvre named Vincenzo Peruggia just took her off the wall, tucked her under his coat, and walked right out. For more than 2 years, she was gone. The whole thing became this massive global media circus. So when Perugia was finally busted trying to sell her in Italy, her return to Paris was this huge, triumphant event. And this is the really wild part. The power of her absence. That empty spot on the wall, it became a bigger tourist attraction than the painting itself had been. People actually lined up just to stare at the blank wall where she used to hang. This was the turning point. The theft didn't just make her famous, it turned her into a full-blown celebrity. Her face started showing up everywhere, on postcards, on ads, on the front page of every newspaper. The crime gave her a story, a drama that made her so much more than just a painting.
So the heist basically put her on the map. But once everybody was looking at her, what was it that kept them so hooked? Well, part of her celebrity power comes from some really cool tricks of perception, which brings us to the science.
We've all heard of the Mona Lisa effect, right? That creepy, cool feeling that her eyes are locked on you, following you as you move around the room. It's one of her most famous tricks. But is it actually real, or is it all in our heads? Well, scientists actually put this to the test, and the results are pretty surprising. It turns out that how you see her gaze completely depends on where you're standing. From far away, like when you're battling the crowds at the Louvre, most people feel like she's looking right at them. But if you get up close, that feeling totally disappears. Suddenly, it looks like she's looking somewhere else.
Let's break that down a bit. Scientists did the math and figured out that her line of sight is actually aimed about 15 degrees to your right, so technically she's not looking at you at all. The whole illusion is created by the mix of her head position and how our brains try to make sense of it. And get this, if you show people just her eyes, without the rest of her face, they agree she's not staring. But interestingly enough, they still think her eyes are smiling.
So what does this all mean? That famous, uncatchable gaze isn't something that's permanently baked into the painting. It's a dynamic illusion, a trick of the light and mind that makes our experience feel real and alive, but it changes with every step you take.
Okay, so we've got crime and we've got science. But there's a third layer to her fame, and this one is maybe the most complex. It's not really about the painting itself, it's about us, the viewers, and all the cultural ideas we bring with us when we stand in front of it.
The argument here is that we never really see a work of art with fresh eyes. Our experience is always filtered through our culture, and that filter shapes what we see and how we feel about it. This shot, from a documentary, really sets the scene. As one analysis puts it, what we're witnessing here is 2 men, alone in a room, with an isolated woman pinned on the wall before them. Just that description alone sets up a whole power dynamic, doesn't it? This kind of observation comes from a critical theory found in the source material called the male gaze. Now, the basic idea is that a lot of Western art is created from a male perspective, which in turn positions the subject, especially if it's a woman, as a passive object to be looked at. And in that documentary, you can really see this idea play out. The narrator actually calls the Mona Lisa a huge flirt, basically projecting his own ideas onto her. Then the curator kind of eggs him on, saying, "You're not completely untouched by her, are you?" And in response, the narrator does this very physical thing. He loosens his collar like he's all flustered. And there's the moment, right there. According to this analysis, that's not just some random, off-the-cuff reaction. It's seen as a performance of masculinity, with the painting being used as a kind of prop to act out a certain kind of male identity for the camera. So the takeaway from this perspective is that our relationship with the Mona Lisa isn't just about art history. It's also tied up in this cultural performance, where the simple act of looking is loaded with all these ideas about gender and power that we've piled onto the painting for centuries. Okay, crime, science, culture. Let's pull all three of these big ideas together and finally answer that question we started with. Why is she, out of all the paintings in the world, the most famous? It's definitely not just her smile, not even close. Her fame is a total perfect storm. It was kicked off by a legendary crime that made her a global sensation. It's kept alive by a fascinating scientific illusion, that gaze you can never quite catch. And it's made profound by her role as a cultural mirror, a kind of blank canvas where we project all of our own complicated ideas about desire, power, and art itself. In the end, her real fame isn't in the paint. It's in the countless stories we tell about her. She became this incredible mirror, reflecting our own world right back at us. And that makes you wonder, right? What other icons out there, people, brands, ideas, are famous for reasons that have almost nothing to do with what we think they are?